Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. The Honorable, it's a manner of this final examination. In this special occasion, I'm Zaelani, student of English Study Program Faculty and Language Education, Institute Keguruan dan Ilmu Pendidikan Siliwangi. The first of all, I would thank to Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, which give healthy and pleasure, and I would thank to the examiner who have given me an opportunity to present about my research paper with the title Teaching Vocabulary Using English Song to Improve Student Vocabulary Mastery. And then I would thank to the Mr. Acep Haryudin MPD as the first supervisor and Mrs. Sylvia Rahayu SPDMhu as the second supervisor, who always provide me support and motivation and always provide extraordinary guidance so that this research paper is finished. In this video presentation, there are 5 points which will be explained briefly. The first, background of the research. Second, objective of the research. Third, research methodology. Fourth, the result of the research. And the last, conclusion of the research. The first point that will be explained is the background of the research. In the background of the research, we'll have the reason. The reason I choose this research because seeing the benefit of song media and the state of school and children in the school in rural areas. English is the first foreign language to be studied at the very level of the school. In learning English, students must know a lot of vocabulary in English. They must learn the meaning of words and how to use them. Vocabulary is important point to be introduced to students as early as possible. So, students will not find many difficulties in learning English. By mastering vocabulary, students will be able to understanding the language both orally or in writing. Students are introduced to noun, verb, and adjective. To introduction of English vocabulary to junior high school, student is not always easy. To make student easy to learn, the teacher must use teaching media or teaching technique that are suitable to be taught in the classroom. Songs are one of the teaching media that is often used in teaching vocabulary. Using song in teaching process will make it more interesting and easy to remember vocabulary because it is presented in a way that attracts students. By using song, the teacher invites students to carry out activities that have to do with daily life. The researchers want to try giving song in English as learning media because children, especially junior high school students, still want to play. Therefore, the researcher will provide fun teaching media so students are interested in the material to be taught. Based on the description about the researcher interested in examining the use of vocabulary teaching material using English song. Next to the next slide. Object of the research. The purpose of this study was to determine the effect of using English song media on student ability to master English vocabulary. The first, to create the teaching scenario and implementation of teaching vocabulary using English song. Second, to know teacher and student respond in teaching and learning vocabulary using English song. The third, to identify the student difficulties in learning vocabulary using English song. The fourth, to identify the teacher and student obstacle in teaching learning vocabulary using English song. The third point in the next slide is research methodology. The research method used in descriptive qualitative, which has become a very common procedure or conducting research in many disciplines, like including education, psychology, and social science. The purpose of the study to show the effort made by the teachers to improve the quality of the learning process in learning English vocabulary using English song. In this slide, in this point, I have 3 points to be explained briefly. The first, the subject of the research. Second, research instrument and data collecting technique. And the last, data processing technique. Next slide, subject of the research. The subject of this research is the object of generalization used in this study. This is supported by the statement Frankel, Well, and Hume, 2012, that the population is a large group where the researcher wants to generalize the result of his research. The research subject in the study were students of Class 8 Riyadul Huda Islamic Junior High School in Cikarang Wetan, totaling 23 students consisting of 10 male students and 13 female students. Next slide. Research instrument. I have 4 points in this research instrument. The first, observation; second, interview; third, test; and the last, questionnaire. The first, observation. To observe the classroom activity, the researcher used observation sheet and field notes. The observation was carried out during the teaching and learning activities, starting from pre-activity to post-activity for 3 meetings. After the data was collected, the researcher analyzed, interpret, and conclude the data. Second, interview. Interview were conducted to determine the response of teacher in learning vocabulary using song as a media. Only an English teacher, as non-participant observer, was interviewed. Once data was collected, the researcher analyzed the data by grouping them according to response indicator adapted from the journal Medicine A 2018. The third, test. According to Brown 2004, as quoted in Gulton 2016, the test is method for measuring one knowledge of one abilities or performance in a particular domain. In short, the test as an evaluation instrument is a systematic procedure of description, collection, and interpretation. To measure the ability of tests take to achieve knowledge and performance of what they have learned in the learning process and to get score assessment. The last, questionnaire. A questionnaire is a research instrument consisting of a series of questions or their type from that aim to collect information from a respondent. According to Brown 2007, as quoted in Nugraha 2019, the questionnaire was used as a research instrument in the study. The researcher gave questionnaire to students to know their response to English vocabulary learning media using song. In the next slide, data processing technique. I have 3 points. The first point, data reduction. Data reduction means making summarize, choosing them and make certain categories and patterns so they have meaning. Data reduction is a form to analyze, to sharpen, select, focus, discard, and organize data toward concluding. Data presentation is the process of presenting data after the subtraction. The data presentation of data in qualitative research is carried out in the form of summarize, chart, and relationship between categories, pattern, and other, so that they are easily understood by the readers. The last, conclusion of data or verification of data. In qualitative research, the initial conclusion drawn are still temporary, so they can change at any time if not supported by strong evidence. But if the conclusion drawn are supported by valid or consistent evidence, then the conclusion drawn are flexible. In this slide, in the fourth point is result. I have 4 points to be explained briefly. The first, scenario and their implementation. The second, the teacher and student response. The third, student difficulties in learning vocabulary. The fourth, the teacher and student obstacle in teaching learning vocabulary using English song to improve student vocabulary mastery. In the next slide, scenario and their implementation of teaching vocabulary using English song to improve student vocabulary. In this slide, I have displayed treatment in meeting and on the table. In this research field, researchers obtained data about scenario implementation of vocabulary using English song to improve student vocabulary mastery in learning activities for class A grade student of MTS Riyadul Huda, Cikalong Wetan, which ended with giving a test to student after being given treatment. Before giving test to student, researchers have conducted offline teaching and learning activities. According to the plan that have been made, planning is the initial stage of teaching, namely the activity of compiling a syllabus, and lesson plan or teaching scenarios. The syllabus and teaching scenario are prepared to form the basis of the teaching procedure. The syllabus used in class A of MTS Riyadul Huda, Cikalong Wetan is based on the application of Curriculum 2013. Based on the syllabus, the researcher make a teaching scenario which include identification of subject, basic competency standard indicator, subject method, teaching vocabulary, evaluation or assessment, time allocation, and is equipped with the source material used detail of the syllabus and teaching scenario list. In the research appendix, the researcher gave treatment to the student in the class in 3 meetings based on the finding during the research scenarios and implementation of vocabulary learning using English song to improve vocabulary mastery. In this slide and the table, The teacher and student respond to vocabulary learning using English songs to improve student vocabulary mastery. You can see the short questionnaire of student responses. Based on the percentage list in the table of all the results of the student answered to the questionnaire, most of the response shown by the student were good opinion on learning vocabulary using English song. Students feel that its technique make learning more fun and interesting and make students concentrate on learning. Students are active in learning and usually understand the material taught using English song lyric. For example, you can see in the first questionnaire, in the first question. The first question is, lagu bahasa Inggris menarik. Based on the diagram or answer student, there is a good response when learning vocabulary using English song. In learning at school, there were 20 students answered yes, and 3 students answered no. Students felt that his technique made them very motivated and interested in learning English. And for students answer no in question, students are active in the learning process by using English song. This is supported by research of interview. The teacher said, ya, saya perhatikan dalam pembelajaran kemarin selama penelitian, banyak sekali perubahan yang terjadi pada siswa. Pada pertemuan pertama di awal-awal mungkin siswanya masih pada malu ya, dan mereka agak kesusahan dalam mendapatkan informasi baru dari media yang digunakan. Jadi mereka cenderung diam. Namun setelah mereka terbiasa, saya lihat mereka sangat menikmati dan konsentrasi mereka pun bertambah. The third result is student difficulties in learning vocabulary using English song to improve student vocabulary mastery. You can see on the diagram, student difficulty in English vocabulary. From the diagram, so that students have the most difficulty in vocabulary. This is 30%, then followed by interpreting vocabulary 35%, pronouncing vocabulary 39%, then using vocabulary in learning 57%, and reading vocabulary 61%. In writing vocabulary, students find it difficult because they do not know the correct vocabulary. They are still confused about phrasing the correct letter. This is line with interview. Data obtained from English teachers, students are often wrong to write the correct word or letter. Therefore, they consider writing difficult. Pronouncing the vocabulary become difficult for students because they find English difficult to pronounce. There is a difference between symbol and sound. They also think that English material is difficult to learn. In addition, they have difficulty finding English words in the dictionary. They also don't know much English vocabulary. According to the English teacher, students find it difficult because they have a little vocabulary, and they got confused with different words are pronounced the same. First result from the teacher and student obstacle in teaching learning vocabulary using English song to improve vocabulary mastery. The first, device for learning. Second, teacher's knowledge. The first, device for learning. The obstacle for researcher in implementing the use of song in learning are learning support tool. For example, there is only one projector in school and speakers. This is the basic tool used in this study. The researcher encountered problem with the device while preparing the material, and during the learning process, sometimes the device gets an error and cannot be used several times. Then has to wait for another teacher who is using it as well. This is supported by the research interview with the student said. They said kekurangannya suara dari speaker itu kurang keras dan kecil, kadang-kadang bunyi keras dan kadang-kadang bunyi kecil seperti itu. And then for projector is the display from projector is gone. The student said tampilan dari proyektor itu kadang-kadang kurang jelas seperti itu atau butek kata mereka. And then the teacher's knowledge. In this case, learning to use English song or music at school is not new, but it can also said as a new thing for researchers and for the first time experience in teaching vocabulary. Using English song, researchers must find out what type of music or song are suitable for a grade. And then in the last point in the presentation, conclusion and suggestion. The first conclusion, the implementation of vocabulary learning using English song to improve student vocabulary mastery in class A grade and Tasriadul Huda in teaching and learning activity divided into three parts, namely pre-activity, with activity, and post-activity. Researchers have implemented lesson plan to show that students are ready to add new vocabulary, understanding the process of learning vocabulary using English song for class A and Tasriadul Huda. With Gardner theory, song can help students learn better. For the next conclusion, you can read in the slide. Yeah. For the next is suggestion. The first for the English teachers, second for the student, and the third for the next learning process. For the English teachers, teaching vocabulary using a song to motivate and make students interested in learning. Teacher must develop technique, media, preparation, and influence in teaching and learning by improving good condition in learning. Second, for the student, to overcome vocabulary, students are advised to read a lot of literature in English and listen to English song because they can practice for language skill. Also, writing down new vocabulary is one of the best and easiest way to memorize it. And the next learning process, the researcher realized that this research paper is still not perfect. There are still many weaknesses related to the theory or technique due to the limited ability of researchers. The researcher also understands that this research paper only contributes a little to the implementation of teaching vocabulary using English song. That's all I can say. Sorry if the delivery is not clear and many parts are missed. Thank you for your time. Thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.